Mara Finch came to Wren and Fable Books on the first rainy Monday of April, thinking only to earn a paycheck that would blunt the edge of her student loans. She was 26, recently untethered from the dependable rhythms of academia, and plagued by the soft ache of uncertainty that begins when syllabuses and deadlines disappear. The shop sat on the corner of Larch and Morrow, a wedge-shaped building whose leaded windows glimmered like river stones when the clouds parted. A brass bell jingled when she entered, and a little wave of cinnamon and dust seemed to greet her from the rafters. Behind the counter stood Mr. Evo Wren himself, thin, silver-spectacled, and possessed of the habitual calm one associates with ancient libraries and well-kept secrets. He hired her almost without interview. "You read?" he asked. She nodded. "You shelve?" She nodded again. "Then you're qualified." He slid a key across the counter as though passing a token between conspirators. On the way out that day, Mara noticed a hand-painted sign above the door that she hadn't seen on her way in. "All the stories you've ever needed." She liked the phrasing, present tense and plural, as if the stories were already inside you, plural and ongoing, waiting to be recognized rather than discovered. During her first week, she learned the rhythms of the shop, the way a sailor learns the creak of a new vessel. Mornings smelled of brewing coffee and newspaper ink. Afternoons hummed with the rustle of tourists in from the coastal highway, snapping pictures of the antique presses displayed by the fireplace. Yet it wasn't until Thursday that she noticed the low shelf behind the counter, pushed almost flush to the floorboards. It held perhaps 100 slim volumes bound in creamy linen, spines blank. Customers would stroll up, pay for one of the curious books without a whiff of hesitation, and carry it to the reading nook in the greenhouse annex. No title, no synopsis, no author photograph, and no 2 volumes, priced the same. Mr. Wren named a figure in his soft baritone, and the buyer simply produced that sum. It could be $13 or $400 or 92 cents. Cash or card never mattered. Only the exact number, which they treated as inevitable as sunrise. Mara asked about the shelf the second time she saw an exchange. "They're blank diaries?" she guessed. "Not blank," he said. "Merely awaiting." "Awaiting what? Happiest memories?" Mr. Wren pressed a fingertip to his lips like a monk sealing a secret. "They arrive unwritten, but they do write themselves, when properly opened." The next afternoon, a man wearing a blue courier's jacket purchased one. He tucked himself into the pillowed alcove by the bay window, cracked the book, and froze. Mara, shelving travel guides, watched as his eyes filled in slow astonishment. He traced a page with one trembling finger, broke into a grin so unguarded it might have belonged to a child, then closed the volume and held it to his chest. Something about the motion left her throat dry. Before leaving, he shook Mr. Wren's hand for an uncomfortably long time. Mara waited until the door shut. What did he see? "I've never asked. It would be indecent, like peering at love letters. But judging by his expression, perhaps the first time he flew a kite, or the afternoon his eldest said, 'Dad?' Hard to say." She crouched to inspect the shelf. "May I try one?" "Not yet," he replied, gentler than the refusal implied. "They choose their moment, and they choose their price. The shop will let you know." Over the following month, she witnessed scenes that would have embarrassed a therapist's office. A bespectacled grandmother rocking back and forth, laughing and sobbing as she turned pages no one else could see. 2 teenage girls who bought one volume together, whooped in delight the instant the cover opened, then took turns hugging each other between peals of mirth. A retired Marine hugged Mr. Wren so fiercely that the old man's glasses stayed fogged for minutes afterward. Each time, the price named felt arbitrary, $11.11, $5,001, 0 cents a penny. And yet, the customers always had the exact amount on their person or in their bank app. If they didn't, they slipped outside, found it, and returned within minutes, as though fate itself would foot the bill. Curiosity coiled inside Mara like a watch spring. She began arriving early and leaving late, hoping the shelf would announce her moment. She dusted the linen spines, straightened their ranks, even spoke to them in passing. "Whenever you're ready, I'm here." But nothing happened. They remained silent witnesses to her impatience. One Tuesday in May, a new kind of patron appeared, a woman in her mid-30s, sharply dressed in charcoal wool despite the warming season, entered with the posture of someone perpetually bracing for bad news. She bypassed the fiction displays and placed both palms on the counter as though about to argue a case. "I need one of the blank volumes," she said. Her voice held the crisp enunciation of midday radio hosts, precise, unyielding. Mr. Wren looked up. They'll decide if you need them, Ms. Lenehan. Dr. Lenehan. She offered no hand to shake. Mr. Wren gestured politely toward the rest of the store. You're welcome to browse while we discover the price. She remained where she was. I haven't the luxury of browsing. Please tell me. Mr. Wren closed the ledger he'd been updating. With respect, Doctor, you'll learn it when we both do. During the standoff, Mara noticed microscopic details. Linehan's left thumb, tapping a 2-beat tempo on the polished wood, the barely visible run in her stockings, twin crescents of exhaustion beneath her eye. Suddenly, the shelf behind Mara gave a sigh. At least she heard it as such, and a single linen spine slid forward half an inch. Mara's heart leaped, but Mr. Wren's gaze stayed on the doctor. Payment? He asked conversationally, as if taking a coffee order. Lenehan swallowed. How much? 2 questions, he said. You must answer aloud. First, do you believe the mind heals? Lenehan blinked. Neurophysiology suggests it can, with neuroplasticity and appropriate therapy. Yes. Second, do you believe your mind wishes to? Her expression didn't change, but the knuckles whitening against the countertop offered their own reply. She reached for her purse. What is the number? 61 cents, Mr. Wren said. A pause, then a brittle laugh. You're joking. He shook his head. A nickel, 2 quarters, 2 pennies and a cent, he enumerated, as if consulting an invisible receipt. Lenehan produced the coins, though it took her an uncomfortably long moment to locate the penny. Mr. Wren handed over the indicated volume. She pivoted, not to the greenhouse annex, but to the first empty stool she could find. She lifted the front cover. Nothing happened. She turned another page. Blank. A third, still blank. All color drained from her cheeks, as though the failure confirmed her worst suspicion. Mr. Wren watched gently, saying nothing. Mara hovered near the poetry section, biting her lip. Lenehan closed the book, slipped it back onto the counter, and spoke in a voice so quiet Mara had to angle her ear. It doesn't work, Mr. Wren replied. It hasn't worked yet. I assure you, she answered. There is no happiest memory. It needs time, sometimes minutes, sometimes months. And if it remains empty, then you create a new memory, and the pages will know the moment it happens. He touched the cover. The purchase is final, because the possibility is final. Lenehan considered him, then the book, then the door. In the end, she tucked the blank volume under her arm with the care one gives fragile lab samples, nodded curtly, and left. The bell chimed softly in her wake. Mara found her voice. I didn't know they could stay blank. If a person's joy is locked behind enough bolts, Mr. Wren replied, the book must wait for the key. Something in Mara tightened, dread mixed with empathy. She recognized a reflection of her own unsteadiness. Since college, she drifted from one unremarkable apartment to the next, from part-time job to part-time job, collecting inboxes full of social invitations she'd declined at the last minute. She feared she would open her own volume and find the pages as pale as winter sky. That night, long after closing, she lingered, sweeping and reshelving and cleaning displays already immaculate. Mr. Wren brewed tea from a tin labeled Earl Grey for Convocation. Steam haloed his spectacles. You're worried, he observed. About Dr. Lenehan, Mara lied, then added truthfully. And about myself? He opened the door to the greenhouse annex. Moonlight draped itself across the wicker chairs and the fiddle-leaf figs. Sometimes, he said, people try to earn happiness like wages. More hours, better grades, perfect resume. But joy is older than any of that. It remembers how to find you. I'm not sure it remembers me. Mr. Wren looked at her with an expression halfway between humor and sadness. Try an experiment. Close your eyes. Reluctantly, she obeyed. That is the earliest image that floats up. Mara inhaled the scent of damp soil and old pages. A picture surfaced, a creek behind her childhood home. She sat barefoot on a granite outcrop, releasing paper boats she'd folded from homework assignments, watching them spin among the eddies. Beside her, her brother Theo cheered each launch, pretending to be a harbor master. Sunlight flashed like coins on the water. Their mother's voice called from the porch, promising lemonade. The scene wasn't extraordinarily triumphant or cinematic, yet a warmth spread through Mara's chest so palpable, she almost tasted the lemonade's sugary tang. She opened her eyes. Mr. Wren said nothing, but something in his soft smile suggested he knew exactly where she'd gone. Good night, Mara, he said. See you tomorrow. Weeks passed. Summer sharpened the evenings with honeysuckle and tourism picked up. Mara fell into the easy rapport of bookstores, recommending, ringing up, discussing favorite paragraphs with strangers who left as friends. She still hadn't been summoned by the linen volumes, but she had grown less frantic about it. Twice Dr. Lenihan returned, both times stepping quietly to the back alcove without asking to browse. The first visit, she sat down, opened her book, closed it quickly, and hurried out. The second visit, she lingered long enough for Mara to glimpse a faint wash of color across the inside page like watercolor paint swirled in clear water. Before the doctor shut the cover, her eyes brightening with startled possibility. Then, on the 1st of August, during a lull made sticky by the ceiling fan's lazy rotation, Mara heard a hush, a physical hush, like blankets settling. She looked toward the secret shelf. One volume had slid forward, not merely half an inch, but the full length of its cover, lying exposed like a letter awaiting its recipient. Her heart somersaulted. She knelt. A price tag, invisible until that moment, now lay adhered to the fabric, $20.19, the year she had graduated college. She smiled despite herself, fetched a 20 and 2 dimes from her purse, added a nickel and 4 pennies from the till's loose change cup. Mr. Wren, watching, said only, "It's time." She carried the book to the greenhouse annex, choosing the wicker chair whose cushions held a faint memory of lavender sachet. For a second, fear pressed against her ribs. Would it be empty, like Dr. Lenihan's that first attempt? Might it display something she'd misremembered, proving the faultiness of her own heart? Yet curiosity outmuscled doubt. She opened the front cover. The page bloomed instantly with handwritten script in violet ink, every swirl formed in a calligraphy reminiscent of her mother's. At the top, a date, July 17th, 2003. She was 9. Below the date unfurled a story written in present tense, as though happening that very instant. You stand in the middle of the street at 9:42 p.m., barefoot on cooling asphalt, holding a sparkler. Fireflies drift over the lawns like floating commas punctuating the night. Theo races circles around you, brandishing his own sparkler until he's a comet's tail. Dad kneels in the driveway adjusting the tripod for his camera, and Mom laughs because she's certain the long exposure will capture nothing but wobbly lines of light. You lift your arm and write your name in the air, M-A-A-R-A, each letter glowing in embers that vanish yet feel permanent. Theo wants to trade sparklers, convinced yours is brighter. You pretend to bargain like a seasoned merchant before relenting. When he scampers away, victorious, you stand still and smell the sulfur in newly cut grass and someone's barbecue from 2 houses over. For a moment, the entire world seems paused in admiration of its own small wonders. You think quite clearly, if I could bottle this feeling, I'd open it every day. That bottle is now uncorked. As Mara read, color seeped outward, filling the margins with watercolor depictions, her brother's spinning blur, the sapphire dusk, the looping letters her sparkler wrote across the void. She felt the sparkler's heat on her knuckles, heard Theo's giggle, the camera shutter's polite clap. Tears rolled down without urgency. They simply appeared, like dew condensing on glass. When the memory ended, blank page resumed. But not blank, truly. The remainder of the book lay pristine, as if awaiting more entries. For a pulse beat, she wondered if it might fill itself again, but it remained respectfully clean. She realized the rest was for her to complete. She closed the cover and hugged the slim linen body to her chest, mirroring so many patrons before her. She wanted to sprint outside, call Theo, maybe even drive 2 hours home and insist on a family bonfire. Instead, she breathed, letting the memory integrate like warm tea settling into every fingertip. Mr. Wren stood by the annex door. "Welcome back," he said. "What if someone's happiest memory changes?" she asked, voice wobbly with aftershocks of laughter and tears. "It doesn't change," he said. "It multiplies. One day you'll open again, and new pages will oblige." She thumbed through the blank half. "What if the world becomes too heavy and I forget how to make more?" Mr. Wren tapped the spine affectionately. "You've already proven you can. Pay attention and joy will queue up like loyal customers." The following Saturday, Wren and Fable hosted its annual Midsummer Midnight Reading. Candles guttered on every shelf, casting trembling runic shadows upon the ceiling timbers. Patrons sprawled on rugs, sipping lavender lemonade, listening to local poets compete in haiku. Around 10:30, Dr. Lenihan reappeared, a dawnlight softness replacing her earlier armor. She carried her linen volume with the solemn respect of a personal scripture. Mara, flushed with the exhilaration of recent epiphany, approached her by the cookbooks. "How's your patient?" Mara asked, indicating the book. Dr. Lenihan's eyes shimmered. "My father, teaching me to ride a bicycle," she whispered. "I crashed into a hedge, ruined his hydrangeas, cried in terror. then realized he was laughing because I'd pedaled 8 meters on my own before falling. I hadn't remembered the laughter, only the bloodied knee. The book showed me both. She traced the spine. Healing is messier than we admit, but maybe messiness is where the medicine hides. Together, they rejoined the circle of listeners. Someone read a poem about translating whale songs. Someone else recited an elegy for mismatched socks. The candlelight made every face look both younger and older, as if time stretched in two directions at once. Mara's book rested in her tote, warm against her hip like a loyal pet. She felt its gift humming inside her, not finished, but begun. Across the aisle, Mr. Wren poured tea for a cluster of newcomers, his posture angled toward them like a benevolent parent bird. When he caught Mara watching, he tipped his teacup in acknowledgement, eyes twinkling behind steam. Later that night, after the last poet bowed and the last candle surrendered, Mara locked the front door while Mr. Wren counted the register. The hush that followed felt particular, as though the shop itself exhaled satisfaction. "Mr. Wren?" she said. "Yes, Mara." "How did the books begin?" He closed the cash drawer. "Long story," he answered. "Short version, I wanted to be a writer. I kept chasing perfect sentences, certain that once I wrote them, I'd finally feel complete. Years slipped by. One day, I realized the only sentence worth perfecting was, 'I am happy to be alive.' The moment I meant it, these shelves sprouted. Do they ever end? Nothing that grows from genuine joy ends. It only transforms." Mara considered the blank pages still waiting in her book. She pictured future moments, the first time she allowed herself to vacation without guilt, the day Theo introduced her to his newborn daughter, some night years hence when she'd read a story aloud to a hushed room and recognized her own voice as worthy. Each scene shimmered like a placeholder for happiness not yet earned, but already possible. She slipped her book into the display window, propping it open to the sparkler memory, so passers-by might glimpse the glow even without seeing the words. Through the glass, streetlights caught the linen at an angle that made it seem gold-flecked. Mr. Wren draped his cardigan over his arm and switched off the overheads. "Ready to lock up?" "Almost." She stepped outside and inhaled the salted breeze blowing up from the harbor. The night smelled nothing like sparklers or freshly cut grass, yet her chest expanded in the same bright way. She realized the memory wasn't a destination. It was an instrument, precisely tuned, capable of striking the chord again whenever struck. In the lamplight, Wren and Fable sign glinted above her. All the stories you've ever needed. Mara understood now. The stories weren't promises of what could be found on shelves, but confirmations of what already lived within each reader. As she turned the key in the lock, she felt the subtle weight of that truth settle into her palms, heavier than doubt, lighter than gravity, and infinitely easier to carry home.